On a quiet tree-lined street in the suburban town of Amityville, New York, sits a large Dutch colonial house. To the world, it's a symbol of absolute terror. Its iconic quarter-moon windows once stared out like vacant eyes, promising a story of demonic pigs, disembodied voices, levitating bodies, and slime that oozed from the walls. This is the house that supposedly drove the Lutz family to flee in the middle of the night after only 28 days, leaving their belongings behind as their dream home became a nightmare. This is the story of the Amityville Horror, a legend that has terrified millions and spawned a media empire. But here's the thing, the story you probably know isn't the real story. The real horror of 112 Ocean Avenue isn't about ghosts. It's not about a family haunted by supernatural forces. The real, undisputed horror is about the 6 members of the DeFeo family who were brutally murdered in their beds in that very house, 1 year before the Lutzes ever stepped foot inside. This is the true crime story that started it all. A story of a family torn apart, not by a phantom curse, but by violence, dysfunction, and a rage that simmered for years, waiting to explode. This is what truly happened at Amityville. To understand the tragedy, you first have to understand the family. On the surface, the DeFeos were living the American dream. They moved into the grand house on Ocean Avenue in 1965, a symbol of their rising status. Ronald DeFeo Sr., Big Ronnie, was a successful car service manager at a dealership owned by his father-in-law. He gave his family all the signs of wealth: a beautiful home, expensive cars, a speedboat, and material comfort. His wife, Louise, was a devoted mother to their 5 children. The oldest was Ronald Jr., called Butch, born in 1951. Then came Dawn, age 18, Allison, 13, Mark, 12, and John Matthew, who was just 9. Looking at their sprawling home with its pool and boathouse, you see a family that had it all. But behind the manicured lawn, the reality was far darker. Big Ronnie was a domineering and abusive patriarch who ruled his family with an iron fist. The pressure to maintain their status was immense, and the main target for Big Ronnie's rage and impossibly high expectations was his oldest son, Butch. Butch was a troubled young man. Overweight and sullen, he was bullied at school and at home was subjected to his father's abuse. Big Ronnie saw his son as a disappointment. The response wasn't therapy, but a stream of lavish gifts, cash, a new car, an expensive speedboat, as if money could fix the deep psychological wounds. Of course, this only made things worse. By 17, Butch was using LSD and heroin and had been expelled from school for violent outbursts. His father gave him a no-show job at the car dealership, paying him a handsome salary that Butch funneled directly into his escalating drug habit and collection of guns. He had everything he wanted, except for the one thing he needed: stability. Their relationship was a toxic cycle of abuse, followed by placation with money, fueling even more resentment. Rumors also swirled that the family had connections to organized crime. Louise DeFeo's father was an associate of a known crime family, and Big Ronnie's granduncle was a corporate GM in the Genovese crime family. Big Ronnie was known to brag about his own mob ties, which created an aura of fear that kept neighbors from getting involved, even when the shouting from the DeFeo house was impossible to ignore. This was the world the DeFeo children grew up in, one of outward perfection, hiding a core of violence, fear, and simmering hatred. In the years leading up to November 1974, the cracks in the DeFeo family's facade began to splinter. The fights between Butch and his father became legendary, echoing through the house. They fought over money, Butch's responsibilities at the dealership, and his increasingly erratic behavior. In one telling incident, Butch staged a fake robbery at the dealership with a friend, making off with a significant amount of cash. When police questioned him, his uncooperative and explosive demeanor made them suspicious. When Big Ronnie learned his son refused to go to the station to look at mugshots, he knew Butch was the culprit. The confrontation that followed was brutal, with Butch allegedly threatening to kill his father. It wasn't the first time. During another vicious argument between his parents, Butch grabbed a 12-gauge shotgun, aimed it at his father, and pulled the trigger. The only thing that saved Big Ronnie's life was a gun malfunction. The incident left his father shaken, but shockingly, nothing changed. The cycle continued, the anger deepened, and Butch's arsenal of weapons grew. Butch's personal life was spiraling. He sank deeper into heroin and LSD addiction, and his behavior became more unpredictable. He ran away from home multiple times, only to be lured back with promises and gifts. He once told his father he was afraid that if he stayed in the house, he would kill everyone. It was a chilling prophecy of horror to come. In the weeks before the murders, the tension was unbearable. The home at 112 Ocean Avenue was no longer a symbol of success. It had become a cage filled with resentment, fear, and the looming specter of violence. Something had to give. And in the dead of a cold November night, it did. November 12, 1974 was an unremarkable day. Butch went to work, left early, cashed his paycheck, and spent the afternoon with friends. He returned home to attend to dinner, then went to a local bar. His friends later recalled he seemed agitated. Sometime after midnight on November 13th, Butch returned to 112 Ocean Avenue. Armed with a high-powered .35 caliber Marlin rifle, he began his methodical slaughter. He went to his parents' bedroom first, shooting his father twice in the back and his mother twice. From there, he moved through the house. He shot his two younger brothers, Mark and John, once each. Finally, he went to his sister's room and shot Dawn and Allison, also once each. The crime scene police later uncovered was both gruesome and perplexing. All 6 victims were found in their beds, lying face down. This detail has fueled endless debate. How could 6 people be shot with a large rifle without a single one waking up or showing signs of a struggle? The family dog was found unharmed, but barking frantically when the police arrived. And that was the other mystery. The Marlin rifle had no silencer. Tests showed the sound could be heard from blocks away, yet no neighbors reported hearing gunshots that night, only the dog barking. Butch's initial claim that he drugged his family was disproven by toxicology reports. The prosecution later suggested that some family members did wake up, but the overall lack of commotion remains a chilling part of the story. After the killings, Butch showered, changed, and gathered the evidence. He put the murder weapon and bloody clothes in a pillowcase and tossed it into a nearby canal. He then drove toward the bar, discarding his bloody clothes in a storm drain along the way. He went to his no-show job as if nothing had happened, preparing for the final act. Around 6:30 p.m. on November 13th, roughly 15 hours after murdering his family, Ronald Butch DeFeo Jr. burst into Henry's bar. "You gotta help me," he screamed. "I think my mother and father are shot." A small group of friends followed Butch back to the house. While Butch waited outside, they went in and discovered the bodies of Big Ronnie and Louise. One friend, Joe Yeswit, immediately called the police. When police arrived, they secured the scene and found the bodies of the 4 DeFeo children. The quiet suburban street was soon flooded with police and reporters. The initial story from the seemingly terrified sole survivor was a mob hit. Butch told police a known mob hitman must have been responsible, claiming the hitman forced him to watch. For his own protection, police took Butch to the station. At first, he was treated like a traumatized victim, but as detectives questioned him, his story quickly fell apart. His timeline was shaky, and his alibi was easily disproven. The turning point came when investigators found an empty box for a .35 caliber Marlin rifle in Butch's room, the exact type of weapon used. The focus shifted dramatically. Butch was no longer a grieving son. He was the prime suspect. The interrogation intensified. After hours of clinging to his fabricated tale, he finally broke. "Once I started, I couldn't just stop," he reportedly told detectives. "It went so fast. The killer had been inside the house all along." Ronald DeFeo's trial began in October 1975 and became a media sensation. His court-appointed lawyer, William Weber, knew a denial was impossible, so he pursued an insanity defense. Weber argued that Butch was not in control of his actions, claiming his client heard demonic voices from the house telling him to kill his family. This was the first time the idea of a supernatural influence was introduced, a legal strategy, not a paranormal claim. The prosecution, led by Gerard Sullivan, painted a much simpler picture. They argued Butch was a cold, calculating killer. Their psychiatrist testified that while Butch was a heavy drug user with an antisocial personality disorder, he was fully aware of his actions. The motive, they contended, was greed. Butch wanted to be free from his father and collect on his parents' life insurance policies, which he had inquired about shortly after the murders. The jury agreed with the prosecution. On November 21st, 1975, Ronald Butch DeFeo Jr. was found guilty on 6 counts of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 6 concurrent terms of 25 years to life. But the story wasn't over. In the decades that followed, Butch changed his account numerous times. He claimed his sister Dawn committed the murder. Later, he alleged a conspiracy where he, Dawn, and the two friends planned to kill only their parents, but Dawn killed the children, forcing him to kill her. This theory gained some traction because traces of unburned gunpowder were found on Dawn's nightgown, suggesting she may have fired a weapon, though this was never pursued after his confession. He was a pathological liar, spinning conflicting tales for attention, to ease his guilt, or simply to sow chaos. The conviction of Ronald DeFeo Jr. closed the legal chapter of this true crime story, but it was just the beginning of the legend. We're about to explore how this brutal family's murder was transformed into the world's most famous haunting. If you find this look at the real story compelling, subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss what comes next. The story of 112 Ocean Avenue didn't end with Butch DeFeo's conviction. For 13 months, the house sat empty. Then, in December 1975, George and Kathy Lutz, a newly married couple with 3 children, bought the house for a bargain of $80,000. They knew about the murders, but believed they could make a fresh start. Just 28 days later, the Lutz family fled in terror, leaving most of their possessions. Their story became the basis for the 1977 bestseller, The Amityville Horror, True Story, and the blockbuster film that followed. They described a relentless paranormal assault, cold spots, swarms of flies in winter, strange odors, and slime oozing from the walls and keyholes. George's personality supposedly changed. He became obsessed with the fireplace and would wake every morning at 3:15 a.m., the alleged time of the DeFeo murders. Kathy claims she levitated, and their daughter Missy developed an imaginary friend named Jody, a demonic pig-like creature with red eyes. They claimed to find a hidden, blood-red room in the basement. When they brought in a Catholic priest to bless the home, they said he was slapped by an unseen force and told to get out by a demonic voice. The world was captivated. The story the Lutzes told was a sensation, but from the beginning, there was one question. Was it true? As the media frenzy grew, so did the skepticism. The most devastating blow to the Lutzes' credibility came from William Weber, Ronald DeFeo Jr.'s defense attorney. In a 1979 interview, he made a shocking admission. "I know this book is a hoax. We created this horror story over many bottles of wine." According to Weber, he and the Lutzes collaborated on the haunting narrative, blending details from the DeFeo case with their embellishments. The goal was a lucrative book deal, but they later fell out over money. Still, the Lutzes maintained their story was true, and even passed polygraph tests in 1979. During the lawsuit the Lutzes filed, Judge Jack B. Weinstein stated on the record, "Based on what I have heard, it appears to me that to a large extent, the book is a work of fiction." This legal assessment lent massive weight to the hoax theory. Investigators found no evidence to support their claims. The Red Room was an ordinary storage closet. The priest, Father Pecoraro, later gave testimony that contradicted the book's sensational claims. And importantly, every family that has lived in the house since has reported no paranormal incidents. James Cromartie, who bought the house in 1977, famously said, "Nothing weird ever happened, except for people coming by because of the book and the movie." The Amityville Horror, the supernatural legend, was likely built on a foundation of fabrication, a story born from a lawyer's cynical plan and a family's tale of terror, fueled by a public eager to believe. The legacy of Amityville is a troubled one. The fictional ghost story completely eclipsed the real-life tragedy of the DeFeo family. A brutal mass murder was reduced to a backstory for a haunted house tale. The names of the victim, Ronald Sr., Louise, Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John Matthew, were largely forgotten, replaced by levitating beds and a red-eyed pig. The suffering was commercialized. The key players met their own ends. George and Kathy Lutz maintained their story until their deaths. William Weber's confession cemented his reputation as an opportunist. And Ronald DeFeo, the man at the heart of it all, died in prison on March 12, 2021, at age 69. He took whatever true version of that night he held to his grave. And the house, it still stands. The address has been changed from 112 to discourage tourists, and the iconic eye windows have been replaced. It's just a house. Several families have lived there peacefully since the Lutzes left. Quiet testament to the truth The evil was never in the house, it was in the man. In the end, the Amityville saga presents two horrors. One is a work of fiction, a calculated hoax, or a terrifying paranormal experience, depending on who you believe, that captured the world's imagination. The other is a brutal, undeniable fact. It's a story of a deeply troubled family, of a father's tyranny and a son's explosive rage. It is the story of 6 human beings whose lives were violently cut short in their own beds. The world obsessed over a ghost story, a tale that was easier to digest than the grim reality of domestic violence and murder. But in doing so, we risk forgetting the 6 real lives that were lost. The DeFeo family's tragic end is the one undisputed horror of 112 Ocean Avenue, a grim reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters aren't in our houses, but inside of us. What do you think really happened that night? And which story is more terrifying, the fiction or the fact? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you appreciate this look into the true story behind the legend, please like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's most infamous cases. Thank you for watching.